Eutrophication. Eutrophication is the excessive plant and algae growth caused by excess factors that limit photosynthesis. These factors include lack of nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. Types of eutrophication include cultural and natural. Cultural eutrophication is caused by humans. Humans introduce water pollution into the watershed. This water pollution includes human waste, fertilizer, detergents, and farm runoff. Water from our homes runs into the lakes and then rivers, then to estuaries, and eventually into our oceans. The excess nutrients in the form of pollution speeds up the growth and density of aquatic plant life. Natural eutrophication, on the other hand, is a gradual natural process affected by geology and climate change. Slowly, these bodies of water fill in with silt and organic matter until they no longer exist. This image is an example of natural eutrophication. This image may be a lake, pond, or reservoir. Over time, bodies of water will naturally fill up with silt and organic matter like dead animals and leaves. This will happen over a long period of time until the body of water no longer exists. This image is an example of cultural eutrophication. In the top third of the image, you can see many of the factors that contribute to cultural eutrophication, including fertilizer runoff, nutrient enrichment, urban runoff, sewage runoff, and erosion. In the bottom two-thirds, you can see the chain effects of eutrophication, where the excess nutrients cause algae and phytoplankton to grow excessively and shade out other aquatic plants. This causes animals to die from lack of oxygen, habitat, and food. Decomposers are happy, though. They get to feed on the dead animals and expand their population. Positive effects. There are a few positive effects of eutrophication, the first being how it can lead to increased productivity in some fish farms or fisheries. Another positive effect is the high abundance of certain fish species in some marshes. Examples of these fish species include cyprinids, pike perch, roof, and smelt. Eutrophication products can also be an effective source of food for wild birds. Additionally, nutrient-rich irrigation water can have positive effects on the fertilization of farmlands. Lastly, the addition of nutrients increases plant productivity in some marshes, with these plants being a food source for first-order consumers. Although these positive results can be found concerning eutrophication, the negative results greatly outweigh them. Negative effects. Amongst many negative effects, the creation of dead zones, or areas where there is lack of oxygen, is the most detrimental to biodiversity. Others include ocean acidification, deformation of gills and organ systems, contamination of water and food supplies, and economic strain to neighboring, typically poor, communities. In this case study, researchers looked at the individual effects of nitrogen and phosphorus on eutrophication in the Baltic Sea and the Kattegat. They determined that nitrogen was a limiting nutrient responsible for the primary productivity of phytoplankton. Because of excess nitrogen input from nearby municipal waste treatment facilities, they discovered that nitrogen concentrations were 70% more than the concentrations found in surrounding regions. They determined that in order to restore the trophic levels to those before eutrophication occurred, they would need to reduce nitrogen concentrations by 50%. They also found that phosphorus inputs were responsible for the cyanobacteria blooms, leading to decrease in the fecundity of marine organisms as well as the delayed hatching of herring eggs. This case study took place in the Neuse River and was used to determine the effects of severe lack of oxygen, hypoxia, on the macroinvertebrates. Researchers also looked at how a decrease in macroinvertebrate populations affected the demersal fishes present in the ecosystem. During this 2-year investigation, they measured the various depths of the water in which the hypoxia was most severe. They determined that the mid to deep level experienced the greatest lack of oxygen, and as a result, found fewer macroinvertebrates living there. They found higher concentrations of these organisms in shallower waters where hypoxia was more mild. They also found that the benthic fishes shifted their diet from preying on the macroinvertebrates to plants were less nutritional in value. This caused them to mature later at smaller sizes as well as decrease their offspring count. This freshwater case study assesses the spatial and temporal nutrient availability in the river of El Fuerte River Basin located in the northwestern part of Mexico, and its effects on water trophic status as well as the nutrient loading to the Gulf of California. The water trophic status as well as the nutrient loading to the Gulf of California. They collected water samples from 16 selected sites along the river in April and October. There are as many as 400 dead zones to this day. Here are a few documented in 2008. The Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico is the second largest dead zone. Although eutrophication is an issue, the area of the zone fluctuates with every storm, while hypoxic levels return within weeks. Zones do occur naturally, however. As depicted by the graph, the area is much larger as a result of human interference. The urgency and threat to biodiversity rises as human activity rises. This is especially depicted in 2020, where, due to COVID, human activity was at a low. Looking at the big picture, eutrophication has many environmental consequences that ultimately negatively impact human economies and lifestyles. Cultural eutrophication from agriculture and factory runoff results in huge nutrient deposits in bodies of water that can no longer support key organisms. Many fish species die off from lack of food, and this has the potential of translating to terrestrial food webs that depend on marine organisms as a source of food. The primary threat to humans is that eutrophication negatively impacts societies that are dependent on fisheries for income. Families that depend on these businesses have their livelihood at stake. Eutrophication results in a chain reaction that has the potential to have devastating effects of aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems as well as human economies. Conservation. There are many efforts of conservation. Many of them involve nutrient management techniques, and farmers are also advised to manage the way they fertilize their crops as well as manage their livestock. You can also help alleviate this problem by doing simple things like managing your septic tanks, taking a bike to your destination instead of a car, and even saving water. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.